Welcome to the Unapologetic MidLife Podcast. I'm your host, Mindi Lobuzzetta, and I am here today with a special guest, Melissa Miller, stage 3 breast cancer survivor and woman ready to take on the world with healing and resilience. Melissa, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, when you asked me to do this, I was kind of like, if you had asked me to do this a year ago, there was absolutely no way that I could have sat here and shared my story because I was still very much grieving and processing and rebuilding and trying to figure out, where to go from there. So, but now I feel like I'm in a really good place and I'm ready to kind of share my story and hopefully help others that may be, facing insurmountable grief or adversity in their lives. So I guess I'll just kind of start from from the
The
beginning.
beginning. Okay.
So long and short of it, I met my now ex 13 years ago. We got married in 2019, but unfortunately, I was handed a stage 3 breast cancer diagnosis just 3 weeks before I was to walk down the aisle, which was um, I remember the doctors going through my scans and my mammogram, which was a routine appointment. That was basically I'd had the same doctor for 18 years. She moved out of state. I got a new doctor. And they sent me for mammogram the same day. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm getting married in April.
3 months, right?
Yeah, it was like 3 months. I'm like, no, I don't, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm getting married. And so, the next couple months, you just go through things and it's kind of an autopilot. And I'm concurrently trying to plan my wedding and have all these imaging and tests and scans. And I received a stage 3 breast cancer diagnosis literally 3 weeks before my vows. And it
And
was,
how old were you?
I was 39 years old and I was the epitome of not smoker, ate organically, worked out 6 days a week, took really good care of myself, didn't have a family history, all of the things, all of the boxes that they tell you to check so that you don't get cancer. I checked everyone and then some. I did the Coleman breast cancer walk in DC, Virginia, Tampa, Miami, and Seattle. I did that walk 5 times. I walked 300 miles
Prior
before
to your diagnosis.
in my early 20s. I did that walk 5 times and I still wound up with breast cancer. So I was such an advocate for something that somehow I wound up with. The irony there is just, it's heavy.
It's ironic. Like you said, you didn't have a family history of breast cancer. So it wasn't necessarily somebody personally in your life that you were walking for. It was just something you felt passionate about and were doing on your own.
Yeah. And as luck would have it, a lot of that stuff came full circle for me. So obviously my cancer was very advanced. It thankfully had not spread to my lymph nodes, which was good.
What makes it stage 3 for those folks who are listening who are maybe unfamiliar with stages of breast cancer?
So based on the size of it, my tumor was about 10 centimeters, which is fairly large. Picture like the size of a cutie orange. And then I had 4 satellite tumors that were also kind of encompassing in the same general area of my right breast. So
Okay.
it was pretty advanced and not because of lymph node activity, which could categorize it as stage 3. And I had what was called triple positive breast cancer. So that means estrogen, progesterone, and the HER2 amplified protein were all feeding it. So it was kind of like the perfect storm of steroids that were all like, hey, let's just keep growing these tumors. Not
These
ideal.
hormones were essentially like feeding the growth of these tumors.
Yes. So I basically got married and 2 days later and it was it was such a surreal moment and that day was just surrounded with so much love and so many it was kind of the elephant in the room. Everybody knew what was about to go down, but it was a great day. And, and I had that day and it was wonderful. And then 2 days later, I was getting wheeled into the OR to have my port put in and I started chemo the Wednesday after I said my vows.
Did you have surgery prior? I feel like I remember you having surgery prior to your wedding.
No. So my surgery was actually after I did
After,
the
okay.
first rounds of chemo. because the HER2 markers that were in my DNA testing, they essentially make the targeted therapies more effective to go in there and try to shrink the tumor and then remove what's left. So I
Okay. Yep.
had, which is that's the kind of the standard of care for them. And then
Hmm.
so I went through chemo and I actually cold capped, and that was such a life-changing thing. And I know we had talked personally about that the state of New York just finally made it, the insurance companies have to pay for it. So just to kind of touch on cold capping, because it was such an instrumental part. Essentially, you freeze your skull to sub-zero temperatures with either a cap or a machine. There's a combination of different things you can do, but it freezes your hair follicles and your skull so that they're closed and the chemo actually can't penetrate. So I only lost about 25% of my hair throughout chemo, which was it
So
was so nice.
important. Keep some
Yeah.
normalcy for you, right? Because
Yeah.
I remember somebody else being interviewed, and they were interviewed for something, and they were like, well, what was the worst part of your cancer? And she was like, losing my hair. And he's like, no, pick something else. No, dude, that's like a huge part of being a woman. Our hair.
Yeah, yeah, and, I actually lost a friend when she found out I was cold capping, and believe it or not, she was a nurse, and she was in her residency at an oncology unit, and she's like, "Losing your hair is just part of the journey," and I'm like, "But if there's an option,
To not lose your hair, what woman doesn't want to
yeah,
not lose her hair?
walk into a grocery store or go out with my girlfriends on a Friday night or just feel like you don't." Yes, as a woman, like, it's just hair. But any person who says that to you, like, then let's shave your head. Let's
Yeah,
shave your
as
head,
you're
and then you
losing
tell me if
that,
it's
because
worth it.
yeah, that was the only option that I had, was to shave my head. That was how I controlled losing my hair. And if I had had the option for a cold cap, you bet your ass I would have been doing it, because it's
100%.
whatever kind of normalcy that can be maintained through this horrific life-changing experience.
Yeah.
If it is just hair, but it's that one thing that helps you feel better, then to me, it's everything.
Yeah, I mean, I would do it again in a heartbeat, knock on wood. I don't ever wanna go into that realm again, but it was expensive. I took a year of cold showers. You can only wash your hair once a week. There was a lot of stipulations, a lot of fancy shampoos. There was a lot. But at the end of all of it, I still had probably 75% of my hair. Now I cut my hair very short just so it, was manageable and all that. But you know what? It was worth
You
every
did what
penny.
you had to do, and it sounds like it wasn't just like cold cap and you're on your way. It was a lot of maintenance and a lot of work on your end
Oh yeah,
to
yeah.
maintain your hair.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, you basically have to baby your hair like you're an infant who has I mean, like, you can't really brush it. It's a lot, but I will say absolutely worth every bit of extra work and every bit of those horrible cold showers and all of the other stuff I had to go through, because at the end of the day, I could run to the grocery store and not have people look at me and be like, "Oh, she's sick." And that for me was just being
I
able
think.
to as a fellow survivor, we have this ingrained, like you almost feel like an alien in your own body at times. And I don't know if you felt that way, but you're just like, what, like, this is my new norm. Like, this is who I am. And
Yeah.
it's like imposter syndrome in your own body. And you're just trying to navigate all of these physical changes that are completely out of your control.
Feels like your body is trying to kill you through the process. And the chemo, I mean, the chemo is definitely trying to kill you, even
Yeah.
though ironically it's there to keep you alive.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, and the crazy thing is that, you're doing this chemo and you're like, "Okay, this is working. It's great," and I had my first 3 sessions of chemo were all double dense, double dose. I can't remember what it's called, but I mean, my oncologist in hindsight, and we had a conversation, he's like, "I hammered you with chemo the first 3 rounds." He's
Mhm.
like, "We had to act aggressively because we lost almost a month with, you going through your wedding," and he was really a big advocate about, like, let's let's get through your let's get through your wedding, and but then we've got to, like, hit the ground running. And thankfully there was some red tape with insurance and some scans and getting approvals on things that I was allowed to get married. But
That's another layer of this. You become immunocompromised when your body is going through this, and it's stressful to plan a wedding. It's stressful to be going through this already. And it's scary. Like, I don't think anything prepares you at 39 for facing your own mortality. There's a layer of
Yeah. Yeah.
grief that comes with that.
Yeah. And, you start reading the stats of like, what does survivability look like? What odds are stacked against me? Like, where am I going to be when all this is done? In hindsight, wow. You face your own mortality. And I feel like you have a complete mind shift on your whole life. The way you look at things, the way you process things, the way you value things. Like everything changes when you hear the words, you have cancer. And it just does. And that's just, there's no two ways about that. There's no way to sugarcoat that. I used to have a spotlessly clean kitchen before I would go to bed. And then I look back and I'm like, but I miss those moments sitting on the couch with my family, like decompressing after our day because I was more worried about a few dishes in my sink. And I had a conversation with somebody recently and I said, you know what? I cook as I clean. But like if there's a couple pans or something in the sink overnight, no one's gonna die. Like it's fine. I'll do them in the morning when I'm taking care of the dogs, like all good. And it's those little minute things that you just kind of step back and you're like, big picture. My
You
kitchen.
start to reprioritize, I think, life in your perspective towards what's important. If you're giving your energy to the dishes in your sink instead of your family who's sitting in the other room,
Yep. Yeah.
you have to re-examine that. And this forces you to do that.
Yeah. Because you're like, well, would I rather have those moments sitting on the couch with my kids watching TV, or would I rather have a clean kitchen? I don't care if I have a clean kitchen. No one's coming to my house to do a white glove test on my kitchen after I cook dinner. No one cares.
Your kitchen, even if there was a couple dishes in the sink, is still very much presentable because I don't picture you being somebody who's
No.
not on top of things. But your house, it's okay for it to lived in because it is lived in.
Yeah, I'd say I read about a 90% threshold most of my life. It's like 90% clean. Like white glove test, maybe not always pass, but hindsight, it's those things. Like when you're handed, and I hate to say the cancer card, but when you're handed
It is
that,
what it is.
you just kind of like it is like a hard stop and it is a big perspective reality check. Like what is going on in my life? So yeah, getting back onto kind of like my story and how all that transpired. Cancer is obviously a big part of my story, but it's only the tip of the iceberg, as you know personally. So I did chemo. I did 6 rounds of very intense chemotherapy, and basically once every 3 weeks. And then I went and had a scan. And at that scan, that's the scan that they do before you have a mastectomy. And I opted to do a double because for reconstruction purposes, it's just easier to kind of,
And
eliminate.
odds, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that shrinking your odds too of reoccurrence?
Yeah. If you take out the surface area where a tumor could potentially come back. Yeah. So not only was it kind of a cosmetic thought process, but also it kind of eliminates that other playground for a tumor to come back. So I went in and I had my pre-scan and my pre-surgery scan, and I got the results, and I was devastated because I did not have a complete response to chemo. And that was really, really devastating. And I like looked at my now ex and I said, I'm not ready to die. Like I'm 39 years old. Well, by that point I was 40, but I was like, I'm not ready to die. Like, what am I gonna do? What's another option? Like, what else can we throw at this? And then I had a conversation with my oncologist on Monday, and he said, I didn't expect you to have a complete response. He said, your cancer was extensive. He said, you actually had a better response than I thought we were going to. And he's like, and I hammered you. He's like, I hit you with chemo. So he said, I'm happy with this result. He said, at the end of the day, you have two amazing surgeons. You have your breast surgeon and your plastic surgeon, which is kind of important to note that you do have two
Yes.
surgeons for reconstruction. You have the one that actually does the removal of your breast, and then you have the one who does the reconstruction beginning stages. And that all happens in the same day and about I think it was like a 13-hour surgery. It was a
Yeah,
full
it's
day.
long.
And he said, but you have surgeons that are going to take all of this cancer out, and they're going to check your lymph nodes, and they're going to do everything. And we're going to make sure you're going to be okay. He said, I know you didn't have a complete response. I know that that's devastating. He said, but with your stage and what we started with, he said, this is a great response. My oncologist, I will sing from the mountaintops. He is an absolutely amazing man. Every time I see him, He says, "God bless you. Have a beautiful day." Like, that's how he always closes. And,
He's
I
got an
just
amazing bedside manner, and
bedside
he's
manner off
personable.
the charts. I love him.
Huge.
He is so great. It's funny because now, I live in Tampa, but my oncology team is still in Orlando. And I do have a team also at Moffitt in Tampa, which is a fantastic cancer center as well. But my oncologist, he refuses to break up with me. He's like, "No, you're still coming to me every 6 months." But I do love that because he's like, we've been together for 5, 6 years now. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm just not ready to cut you loose yet. So
How frequently do you go and see him still at this point?
I am every 6 months with him, and then in between there, he is now allowing me to go to Moffitt every 3 months as well. So basically, somebody is still has eyes on me and my case and my labs every 3 months. And that's really just because of the stage of my cancer, and HER2 cancer is typically known to come back within 5 years. I am at 6.5 years now cancer-free,
Yay!
so that's exciting.
Congratulations. Yes, that's
And,
huge.
I feel like when I hit that 5-year mark, my shoulders just, like, dropped. I was like, "Okay, like, I've gotten through the first big hurdle." For my type of cancer, you're not technically cancer-free until you hit 5 years. You're in remission, which just kinda has, like, this stigma with it. It's like, "Oh, well, like, you had cancer, but, like, do you not have cancer now? Oh, you're cancer free. And I'm like, technically not, like, not with the type of cancer I had. So hitting that 5-year mark was so huge for me. And now I'm like, I don't know. It's weird. Like, it's such, yes, it was another day on the calendar, but it was just that it was a big box to check. And
Yeah.
unfortunately,
Yeah.
I checked that box in the middle
You
of my life
did.
imploding. But so yeah, I had my mastectomy and it went well. Obviously, it's alarming when you wake up from surgery and then you see yourself in the mirror for the first time.
You did spacers, right, for
Yeah, yeah, I
reconstruction
had
right
the
afterwards?
tissue expanders. I had, it's a lot when you take those bandages off for the first time. And I remember just standing there in the mirror. And these are all things that I feel it's important for people that are cancer survivors or people that are either facing this or kind of in the middle. When you see yourself in the mirror for the first time without something that you were anatomically born with, that has been a part of you your entire life.
It's a identifying component of being a woman. I don't know if it's similar to the hair. It's obviously a little more hidden, but, that's a part of being a woman. It's a part that, you identify with, and now it's
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah, and so, it's just very surreal, and I think that just kinda compounded that, like, alien in your own body sort of feeling because I'm like, "What is this?" But, again, I had a really great plastic surgeon, I had an amazing breast surgeon, the rest of that year continued, and and then let's just sprinkle in the little pandemic to the end of
Yeah, the
that year.
pandemic was whoo. So you're going through this and the pandemic hits. So that's a layer of this. You're in Florida, I like to note that too. So your state got back on track a little quicker than other states,
Yeah.
but there's still that layer. You're immunocompromised. You do not want to get sick with
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, end of the year wraps up. I'm supposed to start radiation, and I had some complications with an area that wasn't healing. Thanksgiving morning, I wound up in the ER with my breast was open and I could see my tissue expander, and I had to have a complete stranger sew me up, which was just crazy in
Not
itself.
yeah.
Christmas, I had another issue the day before Christmas. I had to go in and have another incision opened up. And so all of these delays were just postponing my radiation, which was supposed to have started in November, but I
Mm.
wasn't healed. So now we have this concurrently riding with the pandemic that's brewing, and I'm still haven't started radiation. And so 2020 just kicked off with all of the
Well,
things.
yeah, and the last thing you wanna be doing is delaying that radiation, because that radiation is supposed to catch any potentially missed
Any even one
cells.
little micro cell of
Yeah.
cancer
Yeah.
left. And so now, I had September, October, November, December. And technically also your expanders are really not supposed to hang out in your body more than 6 months. So that was a whole other complication
Those are
too. So
Yeah.
beginning of 2020, I finally started radiation. My breast at that point looked like a Frankenstein sort of situation, but it was closed. And, my plastic surgeon's like, trust this process. Like, I got you. I will clean. And he does beautiful closures. He's like, it will be perfect when you're done. Like, just trust me. And so I did my radiation, which was incredibly hard. I was sick every day from it. And I believe it or
Because
not,
it's
you're
your
not really.
whole, well, not just one breast, you had the whole chest area,
No, it was basically collarbone to about mid-rib, like
one
my
side,
armpit,
unilateral.
basically kind of like this whole area was all
Okay.
radiation, which you're not really supposed to get nausea or nauseous from that, but I did every day. So I would midday have my radiation, go home. I was sick, laying in bed, and that literally repeated for 8 weeks. Every single day I did it.
So as a trauma therapist, I also think of the trauma. So not only did this area have cancer, but now we're creating more trauma essentially by radiating,
Mhm.
and essentially the body keeps the score. So I'm never shocked when people have a reaction to something in a way that a lot of people are like, "Oh, you shouldn't be feeling sick from that." Well, number one, this is trauma, and we're targeting that area. And also, I don't know if it's the grief, the stress. I mean, I think there's so many layers to this that, yeah, you're having a visceral response
Yeah.
to everything going on.
Yeah, yeah, and that was just it. And so I finished radiation. I was very regimented in all of the things that I had read on the internet, and I did it. And I luckily did not have any of my scan break open or anything, which was great. And then I finished at the end of February, and I think the world shut down like 10 days later.
Wow.
And so here I was queued up to have my expanders taken out, have my implants put in, and finish reconstruction, and everything got put on hold for another 4 months. It was 4 months additional that my expanders were in, and which is not ideal because they're heavy, they're awkward, and they just continued to stretch out my chest wall to the point that when I finally did have my implants put in, I woke up to be
Much
a lot
larger than
larger.
you were
Oh,
expecting to be.
yeah, there was a little extra added bonus there, and I fully understand why it had to happen because there was just so much extra skin, and he was like, I don't wanna leave you, rippled and it's all these things that,
Mhm.
doctors don't really talk about, but it's like
They have to
you
make a judgment call in
yeah,
the surgery,
yep,
even though you identified a size. He doesn't want to leave you aesthetically
yeah, I
looking
was supposed to
different.
be a regular C, and I woke up as a double D, which was a significantly larger acquisition than I was hoping for.
Yep.
But I was like, okay, this is what it is. I'm put back together. I'm whole. I'm good. Now, I ended up doing, when I found out I didn't have a complete response to chemo, I ended up doing a deep dive into the internet. I found a clinical trial over at Moffitt in Tampa, and that's how I got hooked up with them. So once I finished and, the world kind of slowly started to open back up in the fall, I ended up doing a clinical trial, which it was so cool. I mean, to go through this process. And there was, I think, about 70 of us throughout the US in Tampa and in Cleveland Clinic, and then also in Seattle, were the
Is
three
this a
host
phase
hospitals.
one or phase two clinical
Phase
trial?
two. Phase
Okay, so
two.
that's positive too.
And in phase one, it had a really good success rate. So I know there was no placebo, which I was like, okay, like I'm on board to do this because I'm not going to go through all this and potentially be getting
Not
a
get it.
placebo. So
Yes.
I knew I was getting one of two drugs that basically, long and short of it, to not go down the rabbit hole of too many medical terms, I had my blood taken with parts of my blood, and they made a custom vaccine that was then re-injected into my body over the course of 18 months to basically reprogram my immune system so that if cancer starts to grow in my body again, it seeks it out, targets it, and destroys it before it can become a tumor.
Are these your WT cells? Do you
No,
remember?
I'm not sure what cells it was, but it
It's
was a
okay.
vaccine that was combined
It's
with
immunotherapy. We're
yes, yeah,
using your body to recognize the cancer cells. I was part of a clinical trial after mine for leukemia. I know that these therapies are out there
they're on the
for
horizon.
patients. Yep.
Yeah, and I'm actually really excited. I think the results come out this year, but there's a Facebook group of us, and we have lost two sisters. Of everybody that's gone through this trial, I mean, the success rates are astounding. And for me, it was I'm getting access to a drug 10 years before it hits the market. The demographic to fit the clinical trial felt like I was getting an interrogation with a board, just going
Yeah.
through because they wanted so many different things. But the fact that I qualified for this study was just a blessing in itself. And so I did it. I really prolonged my entire treatment by another 18 months because I was back and forth to Tampa every month getting these injections, having extensive labs, 25 vials of blood every
Yep.
month. I mean, it was, clinical trials are
Yep.
they're
Yep.
not fun. You're not compensated for them, but can you
Nope.
really put a price on your life? Because I would 100% do that again in a second because I really feel like it was such an extra layer of protection for me to know that like this isn't going to come back. Like I'm doing everything in my power to I always say let's just slay the pink dragon.
Yeah, mine was a clinical one. Like I was like maybe like the third or fourth person to ever get this. And mine ended up not working out. But since then, I mean, it's been 15 years. They have come out with an immunotherapy now for AML, which is a very aggressive leukemia. And it's available now for cancer patients. Even though it wasn't the same clinical trial, I feel like it's helping to pave the way for future for
Yeah.
cancer patients or survivors to have a less threatening treatment plan, because the other layer of this is the chemo can kill you. I mean, you're trying to get rid of the cancer, but the chemo is also wiping out all of the good stuff.
Yeah, I was hospitalized, I think 2 or 3 times during my chemo for low platelets,
So you needed
GI.
blood transfusions, which I
Mhm,
did as well. Yep.
mhm, yeah,
Also, a layer of yours, right at 39, and you probably didn't have any connection to this necessarily at the time, maybe consciously. We're talking about it more now, but your cancer is hormone fed. So you're perimenopausal. Typically at 39 there is a decline in hormones,
mhm.
and now through this, I mean, you're suppressing estrogen, you're suppressing everything.
All of my hormones were suppressed
Can we
from the
talk
start.
about this? Because I think there's a big concern for patients who undergo hormone driven cancers. And obviously, there's multiple layers in there. Now, what does that look like for you now at this point in time? Because hormone health is also part
Yeah,
of what helps
yeah,
us mentally to feel good and
yeah,
physically
yeah.
to feel good.
Yeah, and that's actually it's a really good point. Basically, there was medicines that I was getting to basically suppress all hormones from my body, like in its entirety. So I go from being a normal 39-year-old, with sex drive and all of that to like cut off like
Yeah.
everything. And you're like, what is happening? I'm a
Yep.
newlywed. Like there's like all these things going on.
Still in the prime
And
of your life. Right.
yeah, and I'm like, what just happened? Like, so when I finished chemo, then I started, I can't remember, I think it was Lupron, I think it might have been the name of it, but I was doing those injections
Okay.
to completely suppress all hormones. And I had to go in every month for that and get a nice little shot in my hip. So that was fun and it burned and
Yeah.
wasn't a fan. But I knew that that was an extra layer of protection that I needed to do while I was still kind of coming down from this. And part of that, we did full genetic testing. And as a result of that genetic testing, I actually had several markers that gave a good indication that I could end up with a secondary cancer, either ovarian or cervical. And so after talking with my oncology team at the end of 2020, add to the layer of hormones, I had a complete hysterectomy in December of 2020.
That's including ovaries.
Yep, everything. So I went into full blown menopause at 40 years old, which was definitely an adjustment. And I couldn't take anything because my cancer.
Devastating.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I was the night sweats, the mood swings, the up and
The
down and
irritability, the
yeah,
inability to like handle stress. I know estrogen is our buffer to that. Our
yeah.
hormones help us with that.
And you know what happens when you don't have the estrogen? The cortisol is like
Yeah.
off the
Yeah.
charts.
And you didn't have the progesterone because your cancer was progesterone fed.
Yep.
So that's
Yeah.
being suppressed as well, which
Yeah.
is like your anti anxiety hormone. It's your sleep hormone. Your sleep had to have been a disaster as well.
Yep. I wasn't sleeping. I mean, I just, and I think all of those things really kind of confounded the perfect storm that happened in 2024. I was 40 years old and it's funny because I hear all my girlfriends now talk about like all their menopause stuff. I'm like, girl, like I
I
did all
got
that.
you. Yeah.
I had no HRT. I had none of that because I couldn't. Like, I just had to figure it out. And you know what? I will say that there are days that I look back and I'm like, how did I even get through that?
Yeah,
But
I think about that. How? How did you do this?
I'm like, I mean, you're already dealing with cancer and hormones and all of these things. And you're also trying to normalize what your life looks like post treatment. Where am I at? Who am I now? Like, I'm not the same person I was.
And the thing that we don't talk about, well, I talk about it, but that people, like I'm going to say an umbrella, we don't talk about what it looks like post cancer. The doctors are great about getting us through the cancer, but it's afterwards. It's holy shit. Yes, I might look okay. Maybe my hair is growing back if you didn't lose it. And now you're starting to look normal, right? Hair's growing back. Your treatments maybe have ended. So doctor appointments are slowing down. But now it's like, holy shit. It's like a wave of everything you just went through finally hitting you in the realization of that.
It's like coming down from an adrenaline rush or like a sugar crash. You're
An
like,
extreme adrenaline rush.
yeah. And you're like, what the hell just happened? Like, and I will say that is such a huge part of it's like the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. And I'm glad that you brought that up because, you and I, obviously we bonded many years ago, but you and I have like had this like really cool bond about that because we've both been so transparent. And we're like, yeah, we're like shaking our heads at each other. Like, yeah. I mean, after you go through treatment and you come down from everything and you're kind of like, they say like, it's like, there's no book like, hey, here's how life goes
Here's how to
after
put your
you're done.
life. Yeah, here's how to
Yeah.
put your life back together after it completely falls apart while you go through cancer treatment.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was, one of the things I was really trying to navigate. So candidly, which kind of leads up to the next little portion of
Chapter
my
of your
story.
life. Yep.
Yeah, when I was sick, I kind of got to this place that I was like, you know what? I don't want my now ex to be sitting home with me with a sick wife all weekend. And so he was kind of off doing his thing. I was at home constantly recovering from a
Resting.
surgery
Yep.
or an infusion or an injection or something. And in hindsight, I don't know if that was a blessing in disguise, but we both kind of learned to live separate lives. He was off doing his thing and I was just kind of recovering a lot. And it's not that he didn't want to be there for me. I just didn't ever ask because I didn't want to be a burden. And that's so much of a cancer survivor's mindset is I don't want to be a burden on others, because there are so many things that you need help with when you're going through treatment.
Yeah. And here's the thing. There's also no rule book on how to help somebody go through this. And I think part of what's hard with this is that other than being there, other than helping with appointments, being maybe a mental or a physical support, that hug, that, hey, I'm checking in on you today, they can't change what's going on. And I think that creates a complete sense of helplessness for those around us. I've had people reach out to me, hey, someone's going through cancer. What can I do for them? Or I see posts like in mom groups on Facebook that I'm in, and it's the little things. It's the showing up. It's the dropping off food. People will send gift cards, and it doesn't always have to be a monetary thing, just your presence. I remember waking up because I was so out of it initially when I went in. They're just, suppressing your system. And I'd wake up and my room would be filled with people. And I felt very loved and it was great, but it's also hard because you're exhausted. So there's the flip side. You're exhausted. You don't have energy to have conversations. You sleep a lot, legit surviving while you're going through this. And that leaves those around you feeling, I think, really helpless.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say one of the things in hindsight that he said to me was, you can't possibly understand what it feels like to watch the person that you're married to go through this and there's nothing you can do for them. And that is a big thing. And I do think that that is probably again another piece and another
Layer.
component to the ending of my marriage. And I actually recently my oncologist told me a statistic that I wish I had better had on my radar that I think it's like 75% of marriages end post cancer treatment or because of cancer, which
I have
is,
not even heard that statistic, but yeah.
yeah. And he said, I see it. He said 3 out of every 4 marriages do not survive cancer. He said, I see it every day, he said, I mean, he's one of the top doctors in Orlando for, oncology. He's the head at the hospital that I went to there. And he's amazing. But he's like, I'm not gonna sugarcoat this. He said, I'm not surprised. He said, unfortunately, you're falling into the bucket of statistics. And so, that is probably a little bit reassuring to me in a sense, but I definitely don't think I anticipated it to end the way that it did.
Yeah. Well, nobody goes into a marriage with hoping this is happening at the same time as they're starting their life out with hopefully their life partner. But also, you're not the same after you go back through this experience.
No,
Like coming out of this experience, you're not who you were going into it. There's just no way you could be because life doesn't look the same and it'll never be the same. If you're not the same person you were going into it, I don't expect your partner to be the same person going into it either.
no. And I will say that was one of the big things that was brought to my attention more than once is that you're not the same person.
And as hurtful as that is,
And I wish that I had the mindset that I do now. And it's like, well, how the hell do you expect me to be the same person when I have like had my body taken apart and put back together? And,
face my own mortality.
yeah, I went through radiation and chemo and this intense clinical trial and all of these things. Of course, I'm not going to be the same person. But here's the kind of like overarching message in this. Any person who's listening, who is the same person that they were 3 years ago? People are always evolving. People are always changing, friend. Like you should always be trying to be better than you were yesterday, whether that's in a physical sense, in a mental sense, in an emotional sense. Like that's just so nobody is the same person.
No.
Add in all the cancer stuff to that, like
Yeah. It should be a lifelong journey in the healing process. I tell people this. You're not going to just suddenly reach this healing destination and you're waving the white flag and you've accomplished this race to healing. It is a lifelong journey you go on. And in a perfect world, we're bettering ourselves. We're doing better than we did yesterday. But sometimes there's going to be things that complicate that create roadblocks to that healing journey. Or maybe now you're on a path that you previously were not on, that you didn't expect to be on. And maybe that goal, that life that you saw for yourself, maybe it looks different now. It just doesn't always look the same for
yeah,
everybody.
yeah. And I can 100% like agree with that because the person I am today is not even in the same hemisphere as where I was 2 years ago. Like
Yeah.
we're not even like in the same like light space, like not even a little bit. Um and just to kind of I mean, I don't need to go through all the goriness. I finished treatment. I was trying to reestablish what life looked like post treatment. My marriage was already kind of struggling at that point. We had both learned to kind of coexist or we had both kind of learned to exist without each other.
Coexist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we were just kind of going through the motions. I was always on edge. It was constant conflict. It was let's do this and hopefully reconnect. But we were also two very different people because like personally me, I was very grateful like for being alive and for getting through what I got through. And, his mindset was just completely different. We just weren't in the same headspace anymore. And so I think that really just kind of continued to push us apart. And then spring of 2024, we had another fight. And that was the first time that he had mentioned that he was thinking about a divorce. And that was kind of like, I heard that word and I was like, okay,
Sure.
like
That
I
was
need, like,
devastating. Like I
I was
just
like,
survived all this and now you want a
now
divorce.
here I am. Like, we had, by that point we were together for 20 years, we'll just say. And so I really kind of took a step back and I was like, you know what? I need to start getting myself, back into a healthier mindset. I need to start moving my body with intent. I need to start doing some therapy to just kind of get past this grief cycle of post cancer life. Like, who am I now? Like, and so I kind of started to do a lot of the inner work, but now pair that with the fact that he had gotten his dream job. And so he was working nights and we were on completely different schedules. We were sleeping in opposite rooms. The divide was just so glaringly apparent. And I was still clinging with every ounce of my being to a marriage that in hindsight I knew was totally over. But that's what, when you're in a
What we
trauma
do.
bond with somebody and your cortisol is off the charts and you're not regulated and you're just struggling to figure out like who you are, you're like, well, this is all I've ever known. So this is what I'm going to try to hold on to.
And
And
I
that's,
think there's a layer of depression, right? I think it's fair to say there's a layer of depression that I think hits. And I know I went through this for a number of years after my treatment, is like I felt like I was just going through the motions. I was stuck in what was familiar, but I knew I wasn't happy, but I just didn't know how at the time to kind of like move on. And then like one day it just kind of clicks. It just kind of hits you that like I need to fucking do something different.
yeah, that's that when the divorce word came out, that was my like, all right, like, let's do this. So I started with an online therapist. I started working out every day. I started just kind of taking better care of myself. And I was doing all these things in the background. But again, he wasn't there to see any of it because we were two ships in the night passing. We weren't
You were
talking.
already, yep, on
Yeah,
different
we were
paths.
yeah, and so the day we were supposed to have dinner with his family and another fight ensued right before we were gonna walk out the door, and he looked at me and he said, "I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce." And I literally felt like somebody took a knife and just put it right into my heart, and for me, it was like, I'm doing all these things. I'm doing all these things, and you're not even seeing them. I'm trying to get back to a good place.
And what was he doing? Was he doing any of these things? Was he going to therapy? Was he talking with a men's group? Was he doing anything to help him process? Because I will say for a caregiver, this is vicarious trauma. To watch somebody go through something and to be completely helpless, right? This is just as bad as anything else that's going to put somebody's life in danger, and witnessing it go down and not being able to do anything.
Well, and I'm sure just, given what you do, most men are not open to therapy and or that like really doing that inner work. It's that like macho ego, like it shows weakness, it shows
I mean, I think men have the ability to do therapy. I think I have just as many male clients as I have female clients. So it exists.
yes,
I think what's necessary though is that desire to want to do something different. It
right
doesn't
there.
work if you tell somebody to go to therapy. It only works if they want to do it and are willing to go to those hard places, the depths within them, and
Yeah.
really be honest with themselves. I think
Yeah.
that's the other layer of this.
Well, and I can tell you that those are some of the darkest, hardest, most profound days in my journey was when I really started to uncover the shit. And I'm talking the shit back to when I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
Um,
I
so
do
when he
EMDR therapy with people, and I'm always like, we have to go back to the early stuff. And people are like,
I
why?
it
And then we start processing. Yeah, we start processing EMDR, and they're always like, holy shit,
yeah,
this is
yeah,
making sense. This is why I do this. This is why I have this thought. And I'm like, it's like a deep, interwoven, underground, connected root system that connects to you today. It's your foundational things that were awry when you were a kid.
yeah, yeah, exactly. That is some of the hardest stuff to go through was going back to my childhood trauma and I didn't have a great relationship with my father. I don't have any relationship with him now. And, I just never felt loved or appreciated or
You
regulated in
carry
my
that.
emotions as a child. And so all of that really kind of stemmed into marrying somebody that long and short of it was exactly like my father. And it took me
We
years of therapy.
tend we tend to repeat the patterns we witness as children.
Yep, exactly. And I was like, "Oh, this is love." But is it? It's not. That's what I thought was love because that's all
It's
I had ever known.
familiar,
Yep,
but it's
yep,
not love.
yep. And so, when he asked me for a divorce, fast forward to the next 30 days of autopilot and trying to, unravel our lives and what are we doing and are we doing this and blah blah blah. And you go through all of that. And in that process, I actually discovered that the reason why he wanted a divorce was because he had found somebody else at work. And that was soul crushing and devastating. And I can remember when I found the laptop and saw the things that I saw,
Yep.
I physically was sick for hours. Like on end. I would read and then I would throw up. And there's like the heartbreak that you say when you're like 12 and your first crush, says like, no, he doesn't like you on a sheet of paper. And then there is the physical pain that you feel when the person that you have spent 13 years of your life with is now with
Has moved
somebody
on with
else.
somebody else behind your back.
And it crushed me to my, here I am writing at ground zero, trying to process what I'm going to do. Like, he was the breadwinner of our family. We have a house together, we have kids together. I had quit my corporate job and I had started my business. And so all of these things are like all just like weighing on me. And I wasn't eating. I lost an alarming lot of weight very quickly, very quickly. It was essentially all the weight that I needed to lose from chemo and cortisol in my unhappy
But
marriage.
not how you wanted to lose it.
Not exactly how you're trying to lose it in a very short time frame. But in doing that, I was just getting through the motions, and you quickly saw a great divide in our friends of people that I thought would be in my life forever. I don't even speak to anymore. And you really learn who your circle is when you go through shit like this. Like, you learn really quickly who's got your back. And so, you had touched on insurmountable amounts of grief. And so
I feel like this is disenfranchised grief too, because it's cancer, it's an affair, it's mortality. Like, I feel like disenfranchised is also like the grief that like maybe not everybody wants to hear about. Some people get very uncomfortable when you talk about your cancer treatments.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's not you, it's their own stuff kind of complicating that.
Yeah, it's the reality of the magnitude of what I've been through. People just can't even process that. And I will say that trying to like get to know people like on a personal level post all of the things that I've been through, there are literally people who are just like, I
That's too
can't.
much. Yeah.
It's too much. And what I wish I could say, but it's not even worth my breath to say to them is, I don't need you to fix me. I just want you to love me. And that's really what it comes down to. Like, I have a therapist, I have a church, I have really great friends who are my chosen family. I have a circle of people that has loved me and surrounded me in every possible capacity for the last 2 years of my life. I don't need you to fix me. I'm doing that work for myself, and I'm light years happier than I've been in probably 10 years. Um, but
But that's
like,
societal's expectation. You tell them something going on, and people, especially men, want to go into like fix it mentality, where we're not looking for people to fix us. We're looking for just that support of just being.
yeah, like I want you to, like, I don't need you to fix me. In fact, I don't want you to fix me. That is the work that I need to do on myself so that I can show up for my future partner and for my friends and my family. And that is my journey. And that is only my journey. Where somebody else would come in would be adding to my life. I don't need you to fix my life. Add to my life. I'm going through all these processes and we're dividing our lives. And I'll never forget my two stepsons who were living with me had moved out because of the severity of everything going on, and they were living with their mom. And I think I had gone for a walk with the dogs or something, and I came home and eating, that wasn't even like on the realm of possibility, but I came home and I showered, and I got out of the shower and I had 5 missed calls from my mom. And I was like, something is wrong. And I was like terrified to even call because
Yeah.
I'm already at 0. Like, I am like barely surviving. I mean, there was days I know I didn't eat for days on end. I don't even know if the dogs ate. Like, I mean, I was not getting out of bed. It was bad. But I was like, I needed to give myself that space to process the magnitude of
Yeah.
what happened in my life. I had lost my family. My boys had moved out. My marriage was ending. My whole life was about to be turned upside down. And I get a phone call that they had found my brother deceased. 9:37 p.m., June 13th. And I remember I fell to my knees and I literally just like, I screamed and I couldn't breathe. And I was just like, why, God? Like, why? Like, like I physically don't have the emotional capacity to handle anything else. And now I've lost my sibling. And it was just, I will say you realize, I think I said it before, you realize who your circle is when shit
Yep.
gets real. And
Yep.
my best friend got on a bright line from South Florida and was at my house at 2:00 in the morning. And she was like, I knew you couldn't be alone. And it's like, that right there
It's
shows you
everything. Yeah.
full circle. My other best friend was up the next day. My other friend who lives in St. Augustine was down the next day. Everybody was like, I don't even know what we did that weekend. I have no idea. I probably just sat on the couch and cried. And I didn't need them to say anything. It was just their physical body there. But that weekend was the weekend that I bottomed out. I was like, I got nothing left in the tank. They were my darkest days.
Do you mind me touching base? This was completely unexpected. Your brother was not sick.
No, no, no. It was, we don't really know the full extent. He had struggled with addiction and mental health his whole life. And I think it was a combination of the two of those that caused an unexpected death. So,
And that's
uh,
devastating. Like you don't bounce back from that.
no, no. And you know what? I will say in hindsight, I think that God called him home because he had struggled with both of those things for so long. And I've done a lot of reflection and a lot of prayers and a lot of just healing to just get to a place that I was okay with losing my brother. And not that you're ever okay with losing a sibling,
No,
but
but you know he's at peace. You know he's not suffering
yes,
anymore.
exactly.
But your faith has been a big part of your recovery and your
Yeah,
healing. So maybe
yeah,
feeling like he's in a place where God has, like you said, taken him home and being at peace with that, I think helps your grief. It's a
yes.
protective factor in your grief process.
Exactly. And so that Sunday morning, everybody had to get back home to their families and everything. And I was so grateful that they were all there with me for those few days. And I woke up on Sunday morning and I was like, I'm going to church. I just feel like I need to go to church. And my stepson had been baptized at a local church near us, and I really liked the facility. And so I just got up and I got in my car and I wasn't raised religiously, but I just had this like overwhelming urge, like I need to go to church. Like
Yeah.
I need something in my life that's going to give me hope, because at that point I can honestly say I didn't have any hope.
And that's a big layer of this, whether it's spirituality, whether it's religion. I think we have to have some sort of connection to something. It helps make meaning of the bad stuff that happens to a degree.
Yeah. And so I went to church. I cried the entire service. I couldn't even tell you what the service was about, but I was
Very
sitting close
emotional.
enough to it was just everything that he was saying and just the presence and just it was like, and this
The
sounds like
energy.
really, but it was just like God was like wrapping me in his arms and he's like, I got you. Like, we're going to get you through this. And so
Mhm.
the prayer group apparently had seen me bawling my eyes out in the church service, and the prayer group and the pastor pulled me into a room afterwards and they're like, hey, do you want to talk to us? And I just, all the
Let it
things
out.
I just unloaded. And that was basically the beginning of my healing journey. And it was, I think it's in life, sometimes God has to destroy your life before it destroys you. And I really feel like in hindsight, that is exactly what had to happen, because I was in an unhealthy and unhappy marriage. I was struggling to figure out who I was. My brother was always in the back of my mind because of all the things he was struggling with. There was just so many little bits and pieces that were slowly chipping away at whatever was left of me post cancer. And so just going through all of that, I really do feel like God just called me to be at church that day with him. And that was
It's okay.
it was exactly what I needed to kind of start my healing journey. And you know what? From that day forward, my little glimmers of hope continued to grow every day. And,
It's given you maybe a foundation of hope and support. And it's different in that, like, yes, we have our people that are supportive, but I feel like if you believe in something spiritual, like God, it's always with you, no matter where you're at. You can talk to God. You can, I don't know, it's like finding faith in something bigger than us. I think that's a layer of this.
there are things that have happened in my life since, we'll call it the implosion. that, or the Great Divide, whatever you want to call it.
Implosion I see it.
Yeah, it was a lot all in a short time. And, I will say there are things that I can't explain other than they were God moments. God was like, I got you. Like, we're going to get you through this. There are just things that have happened that were so beautiful and so profound and so meaningful that have really just shaped the trajectory of where I am today, that I can only attribute them to having, faith in a higher being, that I was going to be okay. And that's what I really have to remind myself on those hard days, that like God's got me. Like he's got me. He's carried me this far. I have an amazing therapist. I have this really just great, very close, tight-knit circle of friends that, I can count on one hand, that I know I could and have counted on, at the drop of a hat, to be there for me. And I think that that's really like a big part of this is I went through that, and I found church. And then the last little snippet is that during all of this other stuff going on in my life, my implant from my reconstruction failed. And so 3 weeks after my brother took his life, I underwent insanely invasive surgery to harvest tissue from my body to reconstruct my breast, because that was my only option. My implant, with talking about radiation and that physical toll and trauma that it has on your body, my implant had completely grown into my chest wall. And I had this consult with this doctor in February. It was a new plastic surgeon that I had to seek out to help me, because my implant was completely encapsulated in scar tissue.
Which limits movement in your arm, in your
It was
chest,
rock
probably for
hard. I
breathing.
couldn't sleep. It weighed like it was so tight on my chest, I couldn't even fully inhale. Things that they don't really tell you, like I get
This could
implants.
happen. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I had to have that surgery. And I will say and originally I wasn't going to have that surgery. I was going to have a different surgery, but I'm glad that I went with it because of the weight loss and everything. And it kind of just was a glorified mommy makeover. That's a God moment in
Okay.
itself.
Take it and run with it. Yep.
So, you know what? My plastic surgeon that did that surgery is so incredibly talented and just such a good human being and just filled with such good energy. And when I told him what had transpired in my life in the last 6 months, he was like, I got you.
Yeah.
And literally, that's about what he said at 5:30 in the morning when I'm getting ready to be wheeled in for
You're
this.
in good hands. I'm going to take
Yeah,
good
he
care
was
of
like,
you.
I got you. And he was like, you're going to be fine. And because I mean, at the end of the day, like here I am, I've had all of these surgeries, all
How
of the
many
like,
surgeries?
to date, knock on wood, I've had 19 surgeries, 12 of which were
Jesus.
on my chest.
Oh my God. It's crazy to hear that number.
But, complications, revisions, I've had one follow-up surgery since my big one in 2024, just fat grafting and just kind of, getting things more symmetrical. But that's really because my plastic surgeon is like an absolute perfectionist. And he's like
And
Picasso.
you're
Like he's
young.
like,
You're young. Let's give
yeah.
you this quality of life. We
And
want you to be able to wear a swimsuit or a lower cut top and feel confident.
yeah, and that's one of the things that, people don't really think about. They're like, "Oh, you went through cancer, you're good. Okay, here you go. You just move on with your life." And it's like not like that. And then you add in, now you're going to be trying to date and you're going to
You're
have
single.
you
Yep.
yeah, you're like, "Wait, hold on. Here I am. I'm trying to like get back out in the world and meet people, but on the inside, I have all these scars and I have all of this stuff and
It
that's
gives you a little confidence to enter the world with
yes.
everything that you've been through. And if a surgeon can give you that, that's a wonderful gift.
He went above and beyond. He said, I know what's going to be transpiring in your life and I know where you're going to be." And he's like, "I want to set you up for like the utmost success." And I will say that that doctor is nothing short of an angel. And that was
Huge.
100% God intervening, putting him into my life, because he ended up calling in a second surgeon who's really good at cosmetic microvascular procedures. And they ended up doing a completely different procedure than what was discussed, which gave me better results. It was all done internally, so I didn't have a bunch of
Wow.
new scars. Hindsight, I was in ICU for 4 days, and I had an 8-week recovery in bed while I'm
But you
processing.
wanted good healing. And I'm sure that idle time was a little bit difficult because I know you like to be busy and you work
So
out.
Yeah, so I did, I did that recovery, and I will say my best friends, they rallied around me to make sure that I had somebody at my house because I couldn't drive, I couldn't lift, I couldn't even sit up in
And
bed.
your mom doesn't live with you, right? She's not with you, but in your area, she's, I know, in a
Yeah,
different part of
yeah.
Florida. Okay.
So I really had to put together, and, my best friend put together this entire, like, this care chart of like what time my medicines were at. She was coordinating with everybody. She had this whole surgery, like post-op schedule, like I'm talking like an Excel spreadsheet, like legit Excel
Huge. I
spreadsheet.
love it. I love
And
it.
she was like, "We got you. Like, you're gonna be okay." Cause I'm like, "How am I gonna do all of this?" I had a friend of mine who took
Overwhelming. It's
yeah,
completely overwhelming.
I had a friend of mine that I work with who took my 6-month-old puppy for 2 months while I was recovering with no questions asked. She's like, You can't handle this in your house. Like, we got you." So would not let me pay her or anything. She was a God moment. Like, who's gonna offer to take a 6-month-old crazy puppy to their house
A
for
big
2
one.
months? A big one, yes. She was 60-ish pounds at that point, like, pretty big, no questions asked. And I honestly just think once I got through that surgery and I kinda started to see, like, where I was at physically, I was, still doing therapy every single week. I was going to church every single week. I was, moving my body as much as physically possible. I mean, I was pretty limited for about 6 months after that, just,
But
because
you could go for a walk. You could
I
go
could
for a
walk.
walk.
Yes,
Yeah.
I could walk. I couldn't really lift weights or do much of anything like, like lifting my arm or anything for quite a bit of time. And then also my abdominal surgery was basically hip to hip. So there was, and my whole abdominal wall was also cut open. And so that had to heal. It was a
Hysterectomy.
yeah. No, not from the hysterectomy, from deep flap surgery. So,
Okay.
basically, my, stomach tissue and fat in that area was essentially transferred internally in my body to reconstruct my breast from the inside.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's the cliff notes of that procedure, but it was a big, massive undergoing. But you know what? I will say that while the recovery was very difficult, I'm glad I went with that surgery because I feel like it gave me the best options or the best results
Yeah.
post-op.
And I know other folks aren't seeing all of you, but you look fantastic. Like you look
Thank you.
great. You would never know looking at you that any of this ever happened.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're welcome. I know that doesn't change the inside, but to look at you and to feel normal and not think that there's anything that had ever gone on like this, 19 surgeries. I mean, typically there'll be something that a person carries with them that would be visible remnants. And I'm sure maybe when you're by yourself, obviously, if you're getting dressed, you may see aspects, but you know, anything you've ever posted, I have never, you look great.
Thank you.
You look like
Thank
you're
you.
in your prime. So it's huge.
I had somebody actually recently ask me if I was 36, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm 36.
Take it and run with it.
I'm 36." And I think that I don't need to air all my dirty laundry of everything that I've been through in the last 2 years. Snippets I feel like are a big enough takeaway from this, but my story is not for the faint of heart. I mean, what I have endured in the last 2 years, let's just actually, you know what? Let's go back 6 years because from my diagnosis and just going through all of that, it's heavy. I mean, it's a lot. People are like, "How? What? Like, how did you get through all of that?" And the biggest thing for me is that a mind shift that I've had since my life imploded is living a life of gratitude. And I'm so grateful for every person who has stepped in, every person that has come into my life, every just unexplained moment that has happened that is just like, what? Like, how did that come about? There's things I can't explain, but you know what? Living that life of gratitude and just, I read so many books on everything and healing and that journey and getting over trauma and establishing healthy relationships and boundaries. And I mean, my bookshelves look like I'm, like I'm a therapist at this point with how many books I have.
You could be.
But you know what? Reading all of those books and just understanding human nature, I understand so much about why my marriage ended. I will own my portion of the
And that's the other
responsibility.
layer of this, right? Neither of us were who went into the relationship. And this is never to blame you for his choices, but I think that that's a very mature and emotionally intelligent response to the dramatic shift in what happened with your marriage, what happened with your life. And I think if we can take like a little bit of accountability, it helps us to understand that, okay, this wasn't meant to be at the end of the day. This was not meant to be. And that's okay, because that means there's something else that's meant for me.
Right. And, the accountability is a huge thing. And I think so many people don't, like my marriage ended and it was all their fault. Like, and I will
It's
own my
never one person's fault.
yeah, I will
It's two
own my
people.
shit. I have
Yep.
I have actually even gotten to a place of forgiveness with him. And I told him when I got to that place. And um, getting to that, I felt like I lifted 25 pounds off my shoulders because then it wasn't consuming me and I wasn't still carrying that anger and that hate and that. And to get to that place of
Radical acceptance.
is that what it's called? Radical.
Radical acceptance. Yep. Yep.
Yes. To get to that place was like such a just
It's
such an
empowering.
empowering moment. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, did you do some pretty heinous things to me? I mean, you set me on
The
fire.
hard part is, and I'll say this, sometimes the blessings come in the really, really hard moments that we're faced with. Like, I say this, I know you've heard this. Cancer was the worst thing that ever happened to me. I never want to go through what I went through previously, but also one of the best. It's led me into everything and where I'm at today, my kids in my life. Like, I wouldn't have the things that I have if I didn't go through that journey. And I think it's holding on to hope, and your life is not done yet. I know we're midlife at this point, that's hard to
Yeah,
admit sometimes, but at
I'm
the same
36.
time,
36.
we'll run with it.
Yeah, right?
But we have so much left. And I laugh because, like, would I like my 20-year-old body? Sure, I would love to have that again. However, if it meant giving up my 47-year-old wisdom that I've gained along the way at this point, not in a million years.
Nope.
Not in a
No,
million years.
exactly. I will say, like, for me personally, I've just been so centrally focused on being the absolute best version of myself, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, like checking every box. I'm physically stronger now than I have been since my ladies. I am consistently in the gym, showing up for myself. That is my start to the day. And do I want to get up at 6 a.m.? No. But you know what? But I leave there and I feel so accomplished and I have so much energy. And I'm just like, okay, let's get my day started.
Like
Let's,
that. Yep.
yeah. And again, I'm not the same person that I was in my 30s. Yeah, but I love that 7 days a week CrossFit, completely chiseled self. Like, it wouldn't. But the person I was then was so broken on the inside and just going through life thinking that everything was unicorns and rainbows. And where I am today, having gone back to my childhood to process that hurt and go through those motions and just doing the hard work. I won't even sugarcoat. You deal with it every day. Going in and reliving those moments in self reflection and going through the hard shit of your life is absolutely the hardest thing you will do besides facing cancer. But it is also the most beneficial. And I would not be candidly, I had multiple friends that would check in on me daily because they're like, we were literally worried that you weren't going to be here with us. And honestly, I can say that I had those days too, that I don't know that I would be here today had it not been for the immense amount of people checking in on me and supporting me and my therapist checking in with me every single day. And, had I not had the support that I did. But you know what? Like, that all in itself is such a blessing. It's just brought me to a place that in 2026, I'm like, all right, like my hope is there. And the fact that I can now talk about this without tearing up and,
Mhm.
not getting so emotional that I have to like pause camera. I can't keep my shit together.
You have done great.
Yeah, thank you. I want to just share that you can get through it. Like, if I can get through the insane amount of insurmountable grief that I was faced with in, let's just say, 3 weeks, losing my
Yeah.
family, my husband, my brother, my marriage, my circle of friends, like everything was ripped from me and I had not a single say in the matter. And but you know what? That needed to happen because the person I am today looks back from 2 years ago and again, I am I am grateful for what happened because it's brought me to the place that I am today. And I want to give that hope to other people that you're going to be okay. You've survived 100% of the worst days you didn't think you were going to survive. And
Yep. And that's everything.
that's everything, just being able to be like, I got this. But I wouldn't have gotten there had I not given myself the space and the grace to feel those really raw emotions of starting over, moving across the state where I didn't know anybody, restarting my life, having to be the sole provider, doing all of the things by myself that I had relied on somebody else for the last 13 years. But it is so empowering and just brought me to this place of, I don't know if I could say it, but like, fuck yeah, like I'm doing this. I'm doing
Yeah,
this
you
by
could say
myself.
it.
And,
I think that it helps you going through this. And I think we as women, because it wasn't that long ago, it was our mother's generation that we're still kind of taught to depend on men for everything. I think this journey teaches you, and I know this is out there. I've heard of this in other places, and I say this myself, learning to depend on yourself and learn that you can do anything you put your mind to. And learning that I can be alone and I can have this shift and I can be okay is literally a fucking superpower. It's a superpower because no one is going to come in and interfere with your peace once you have that.
yeah, you cannot put a price on your peace. There's
No.
not a dollar figure you can put on your piece. Like, like having that solidarity where you're like, I'm okay, like sitting by myself watching TV on a Friday night. Like, I'm okay with that. You know why? Because there's nobody arguing in my house. I'm not walking on eggshells. I'm not worried about the next blow up. I'm not crying or sleeping in another room because we've had a fight, not, wallowing in self pity and trying to figure out who I am post cancer. I have gotten to such a good place of peace that now if somebody comes into my life, they're just going to add to it.
Yes.
Like, I
Yes.
know that I am in a good, sound foundation because I've done the work. And people that still have the stigma that, and I do like that therapy is definitely being talked about more and it's being normalized more without that like weakness and that like,
Yeah. That's the one good thing that COVID brought us. It put a spotlight on mental health and the need to take care of ourselves and also the need for connection in many different ways, whether it's spiritual, whether it's friendship, whether it's re-examining our intimate partner relationships and asking ourselves, is this really what I want? Is this making me happy? And I shouldn't say making us happy because I think happiness is an internal job, but is this the life that I want to be living? And asking yourself those questions. And going
mhm,
through all this stuff, it forces you to examine those things.
yeah.
What do you think is the biggest takeaway from this for those listening? What would you
So
like people to know?
it's funny when you asked me that, because I kind of was like, all right, this has to be like really good. So I have recently discovered an author that I really love, Vex King, and I've been reading a lot of his stuff. And he does like some stuff online and posts like social and stuff. But something that really stuck with me the other day, and people have said to me more than once, they're like, "You're so positive. Like, how are you so positive despite the like absolute shitstorm of a couple years that you've had?" And so one of the things that I read recently of his was it just kind of like summed it up like so beautifully. Real positivity isn't pretending that the storm is sunshine. It's knowing that the rain has a purpose, the thunder has a rhythm, and that the clouds will eventually clear. And that is faith with eyes wide open for your future.
Yeah, I love it.
It's just that hits so it's everyone's like, how do you still have that much faith despite everything you've been through? Because at the end of the day, faith is the only thing that's going to keep faith and hope is what's going to keep you going. And you always need to keep that in your heart.
Yeah.
That faith is
It's
what's
this
going to keep
will to survive, this desire to keep going despite being in the storm and waiting for the storm to clear, like you just said. and essentially that light at the end of the tunnel and knowing it's getting closer and it can happen. It can get better. What are a couple things that you have that are in the works that have stemmed from this wild journey that you've been on? I'm going to call it.
So obviously now that, the listeners have kind of heard what's been going on with my life for the last couple of years, I'm kind of going in it a twofold way. And this podcast was really good because I definitely want to like collaborate with you again on the future of this, just because I feel like our stories are so similar and we have such a great repertoire and bond. But I'm launching what I'm calling Fearlessly Forward. And that is really going to kind of be both a social platform and also a podcast of, just bringing other people on to just share their stories of, inspiration and hope and keeping that moving forward. I feel like everybody needs to live a life of moving fearlessly forward because you cannot move forward with your life if you still have your old life in the review mirror. Like you have to keep moving forward. Even on the hard days, even one step forward is still moving forward. And
Can be a
that's,
baby step.
yep. One step forward is still a step forward and it's still closer towards the life that you want to lead. And I've also been a big part of my healing journey for the last 2 years has been writing. And what I've been working on kind of in the background is I'm actually writing a book and it's going to be called Fearlessly Forward. And my hope for that book is to turn my pain into a purpose to help others that can just read the magnitude of what I have been through. And I mean, it's raw, it's real. It just a little snippet. It opens the night I found out about the affair. And I have let several friends read it and they were like, holy shit, I feel like my husband just had they were like, oh my gosh, like this is as raw as it gets. My goal is to self-publish that actually on the day that my ex asked me for a divorce. That's gonna be like a
Okay.
full like
Little
kiss.
empowering new way. Yep. To
Yep,
remember that
it's like
date.
it's like repurposing that date to something that is
Hmm.
so much more profound. I want to share that. I want to share my story not for sympathy, not for people to feel sorry for me, but to empower others to know that like you can go through really hard shit and still come out on the other side and have my life today. Like the 5-year-old inside of me is so proud of where I am today.
She should be.
And
Good.
thank you. And I am personally proud. Even the person that I was 2 years ago before my life imploded is so proud of every mountain that I have moved because I had no other choice. Was it scary? Abso-freaking-lutely. Was it terrifying to move across the state and not know anybody and have to rebuild a network and friends and dog sitters and grocery stores and, all of those things,
Just
literally
everything.
everything.
Yeah.
Was that terrifying? Absolutely. But did it also force me to learn to stand on my own 2 feet? Yes. And you know what? That is something that nobody can take from you. They can't take your peace and they can't take your will to just figure out life when you don't have any other choice.
Will to thrive and survive.
That's it right there. Yeah. Yes.
Awesome.
It just goes back to that faith over fear always. And do I know what's going to happen tomorrow? Nope. But I have faith and I know that I have survived 100% of the days I did not think I would survive.
Yeah. I think it's leaving behind that legacy of I did everything I could. I love the idea, as you know, of paying it forward. I went through this, and if I can help lighten this process, this implosion for somebody else, if they can maybe not feel so alone or feel like they're the only one this is happening to, then I don't want to say it's been worth it, but I feel like in a way it's been worth it, right? I had to go through this, so let me pull something good out of it and let me pay it forward in some way. And that's what you're doing. Fearlessly forward. I love it. It's
Yep.
great.
Turning pain into purpose. That's really what it's all about. And you know what? If this podcast hits one person and just resonates with them and, gives them hope, then that's, what?
You've
That
done
makes
your
it worth
job.
it. Yeah. Yep, exactly. So,
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. And thank you for so courageously sharing your story and everything that you've been through. And I know this is going to help other people. I do get good feedback on everything that's been posted so far. It's crazy because I feel like, people come out of the woodwork and you never know who that person is going to be, but it's doing something good and being brave enough to put it out there and you're doing that. And I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your friendship. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to literally, I think your timing was like perfect when you asked me. I was like, yeah, I'm
I'm
ready.
ready.
I am
I'm
ready
ready.
to share my story. And because it is, again, it is that like stigma of like, oh my gosh, look at everything she's been through. But that doesn't define me.
Those
That's
aren't
just
your
a part
people.
of my story. Yeah. Yeah.
Those aren't your people. If you're too much for them, those aren't your people.
That can look at me and love me wholeheartedly and think that, you know, yeah, that yes, my story is not for the faint of heart, but I know that I wake up every morning and I look myself in the mirror and I know I'm a good person despite everything I've been through.
Yep. And that's everything. That's everything. Awesome. Thank you so much,
Thank
Melissa. I've
you.
really enjoyed having you here.
Yes.
And I look forward to your future endeavors. And I will
We can
post
collaborate
some
again.
links. Yes, I'll post some links and you'll certainly be tagged in this. And all right, we will talk soon.
Yes. All
Bye.
right. All right. Bye.
Bye. Before we wrap up, I just want to share a quick reminder. This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice or mental health treatment. If you are struggling or in need of support, please reach out to a licensed professional or healthcare provider. Hope to see you soon. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And also, if you loved this episode, please leave us a review. See you soon.